Hey everyone, before we get to this week's show, I want to let you know there are 2 live events I'll be at coming up very, very soon. July 27th at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference, I am hosting a roundtable discussion on stage. If you want to see that roundtable discussion and be part of the environment, you want to be at the Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Conference on July 27th. Also, in Charlotte on August 1st, I'll be on a discussion panel talking about what it takes to create content and media in today's world at the Armed Media Conference in Charlotte, North Carolina on August 1st. You can get tickets to both those events. Links are in the description of this episode. And lastly, go ahead and check out Free the Rabbit's new podcast on Merkle Media. That's Free the Rabbits, hosted by Joel Thomas. Go ahead, hit subscribe on YouTube, your podcast playing apps, and give it a listen.
Merkle Media.
This was all circulating around the base that a giant had been killed, but no one was supposed to talk about it.
I saw 3 long, bony fingers reach up underneath the door, curl up to grab it, and then disappear.
When he came over to me, dude, he slithered over to me.
And this giant comes out of the cave, and they're all frozen. And he starts running and firing at this giant. Well, the giant moves. He's got a spear in one hand, and he's running really fast and spears Dan and holds him up like this. Somebody else, shoot him in the face, shoot him in the face. They basically decapitate him.
Got closer. When he got about 15 yards away from me, I raised that 12 gauge and I blowed his head off.
I feel something pulling at my leg. And I look over and there are 2 small gray entities pulling at me. And they're literally, I'm getting pulled off the bed.
I reached my hand into this bush and I touched air. Couldn't breathe and I couldn't move because I know I'm seeing a monster.
Welcome to the show, everybody. You're listening to the Confessionals podcast. I'm your host, Tony Merkle. Thanks for being here. If you have a crazy, wild experience you want to share with me on the show, go ahead and shoot me an email. My email address is contact@theconfessionalspodcast.com. That's contact@theconfessionalspodcast.com. Or go to the website, theconfessionalspodcast.com, hit the contact section, and you can reach me that way as well. Either way works for me. Just get a hold of me. If you want more shows on a weekly basis, we got you covered through memberships on the website and on YouTube. 2 different platforms, but they offer the same exact content. Mirror worlds right there. It's the same thing at 2 different locations for your convenience. So if you're on YouTube and all you want to do is consume your stuff on YouTube, we got you covered through YouTube memberships. Go ahead and check it out today, whether you're on the website or on YouTube. Extra content available to members exclusive. All right, friends, listen, check out merkmerch.com. That's where we have all our Merkle Media apparel needs, like the shirt I'm wearing right now. If you haven't done so yet, go ahead and check it out. merkmerch.com, all the Merkle Media merch right there. Also, check out merklefilms.com, merklefilms.com. That's where we have all the documentaries that we've shot so far, streaming on demand right there, merklefilms.com, including Sasquatch and the Missing Man, with yours truly and Wes Germer from Sasquatch Chronicles. Today, we have Jessica coming on the show today, and Jessica is one of the researchers, part of Trey Hudson's research team of the Meadow Project. Trey was on the show not too long ago, and now Jessica is as well to relay stories that she's experienced through this research, and she talks about the night that the portal cube opened up and the guys walked through. We talked about it with Trey. She's going to talk about today, and she's going to go into more detail about things that Trey didn't even touch on, like remote viewing the Apollo 11 mission and who or what contacted her, telling her to knock it off and not talk about what she saw. Let's get to Jessica right now. We're recording now. I'll spill the beans later. So today we have Jessica Jones on the show. How are you, Jessica?
Hey, I'm so good. I'm excellent. Thank you for having me today.
Hey, I'm glad you're here. We just had some fun conversation for the last like 20 minutes. I'm like, we got to hit record. We just got to hit record. So I'm really glad to have you here. Before we get into the topic of the day and conversation, I want to give your website a shout out here, thecryptidhuntress.com. We didn't discuss this beforehand, but I'm assuming that that's probably a good landing spot for everybody. I'm assuming.
Absolutely. Yeah. My website and my YouTube channel, The Cryptid Huntress on YouTube.
Awesome. Yes. The Cryptid Huntress on YouTube. You can go ahead and hit subscribe. The website has all their stuff on here. I'm looking at it now. It's great. So, I'm really excited about having you on the show. You were brought to me by my buddy Joel, and he's like, in the Joel way, the real low voice, hey man, you got to have Jessica Jones on the show. And, it was just like one of those things where I was like, okay, when Joel's serious, you got to just do it.
Love it.
But it turns out that you and I have a lot of common people that we talk with. And one is Drew from, what's their podcast name? Drewski.
Cryptid Warfare podcast. Drewski.
Cryptid Warfare. That's right. Yes. Cryptid Warfare podcast. He texted me last week saying, I hear you're talking to Jessica. I said, yeah. And so I got to get him on the show one of these days. He's here in Tennessee. I mean, for crying out loud, I just got to get him in the studio. So you are a researcher, an investigator. You have your own show. You have a radio show. You have the YouTube channel. You do a lot of different things. And I think you said that you've been looking into this stuff since 2011?
Yeah. I've been doing Bigfoot field research, which has turned into just all around cryptid field research, paranormal research since 2011. I just recently, like this past year, went on an investigation with Drewski and all the Cryptid Warfare guys up in Tennessee, of all places. And we investigated a Skinwalker cave and some Dogman reports and Bigfoot reports and all that. Yeah.
Tell me about the Skinwalker cave.
Man. It was so
Tell me about the Skinwalker cave. Like, what is this all about? In Tennessee?
In Tennessee, up in Whitleyville, North Tennessee.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So what's the legend? What is this about?
Okay, so I got contacted. I mean, I've been talking with Drewski and Zooks was on his team, and there was a young lady, Farah, and her husband were living on a property. They had just bought a piece of property up there, and I think it was like Choctaw land, like historically Native American-owned land. And they had a little cabin they bought, and there's a whole bunch of acreage, like 500 acres of land around their cabin, and most of it was farmland and mountains. And there just happened to be this really ominous cave about 30 feet from their back door. Okay, so when they moved there, and it was creepy. Okay, when I got there, it was really creepy. But okay, so at night they were having some weird stuff happening where the side of their house was getting hit. Like Bigfoots are known to do that. They had cameras outside the perimeter of their house, and they were seeing black figures running around and lurking around in the ditch by the house, and a lot of odd stuff going on. Okay, and their floorboards of the cabin would shake at night sometimes when they were in bed, almost like there might be an underground facility underneath the house or something. And so, well, they had some chickens, and the chickens were in a coop. And the chickens were mysteriously going missing. And these are her babies. Okay, the Farah's babies. And so as the chickens were going missing, like they would wake up in the morning and there'd be, like in one case, there was a stick that had been poked through the end of the coop, like shooing the chickens to the front of the coop. So whatever it was, it had to unlatch it, open up the door and grab a chicken and then shut the door back. So it had hands, okay, whatever it was. Now, could it have been a person? Sure. Okay, it could have been like a person that maybe lived in the cave or something, or I don't know. It's kind of isolated where she lived. But there was nothing left of the chickens. It's almost like there was piles of feathers, but no blood, no bones, no chicken feet, like nothing. Just some feathers. And in one case, the one that was the most recent case before we went up there to go investigate, there were feathers going into the cave. Okay, now I'm trained in tracking, animal tracking and human tracking. So is Drew and all the guys that are with us. A lot of those are, former military guys. They know tracking. Yeah. Okay, it's pretty easy to spot some footprints going into a cave in the mud. of course. But when we got there, there were no footprints. There were no tracks in that cave, yet it looked like something had taken the chickens into the cave. So that was really odd. I am not a huge fan of caves. Let me just tell you, I'm really not. I do boots on the ground field investigating, and I've been doing research, like I said, since 2011. I've never really gone in caves that much, but we have a cave expert on my team. We have a little bit of everything on my research teams. Everybody's got expertise in something, and we do have a caver on the team. What do you call it? Speleology. He's into that, But
Sure.
I'm able to like contact people. I have resources of anything that I need as far as expertise goes when I go into these investigations. And in this case, there's something else about that cave, right? There are stories about that being Choctaw land, and a medicine man many, many years ago had banished a bunch of skinwalkers into that cave, which the cave opening was 30 feet from Farah's back door. But had banished them and sealed them into that cave. Yeah. So imagine what I was thinking.
Yeah, so we're talking, is this like central Tennessee, like north central Tennessee?
Yes.
Okay, so this is really fascinating because that must be not terribly far from the Bell Witch Cave. Do you know what the distance is between the two? Do you know?
Oh my gosh, it's not that far, but that's so interesting you bring that up because John Bell's 5th great grandson is a friend of mine. And he just came on my show about a week ago.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. No. And so we were actually I brought him on because he lives at the LBL. Okay. And he's had a lot of weird stuff happen. So we were talking about backwoods cults. Okay. And the cryptid connection. I brought him on to talk about that because he's had some stuff going on with like the Vampire Hotel out at the LBL and stuff. So yeah, he's really very much into the same stuff that you and I are into, Tony. Okay.
I mean, does he have a choice? I mean, it's like part of his family lineage. He doesn't really have much of a choice.
Right.
But okay, so it's not far from the Bell Witch Cave, because I was going to say like the Bell Witch Cave has, in my mind, a similar type vein story in the sense that like there's a lot of obviously paranormal things happening with the cave. But I was told that the cave itself might be guarded by dogmen because it is an entrance to hell, essentially, like a portal to hell. And the fact that the cave you're talking about had skinwalkers banished to it, well, where did they go? Is that a portal cave? I mean, we know that there's tons of caves in Tennessee and Kentucky, and the fact that people talk about Bigfoot and how it seems to just kind of disappear, or where does it live? Where does it go? I strongly believe that if Bigfoot needs shelter, because I'm not totally convinced Bigfoot is always of this realm. I'm not saying it's not of this realm. What I'm saying is I think sometimes it may not be. But if it does need shelter while it's here, a cave system would be perfect for that. Yeah. So there's just like there's a lot of cave aspects when it comes to this region and the paranormal. I find that really interesting that he banished the skinwalkers to the cave. And the idea that the chickens were being taken where the doors being opened and then closed, it seems like, to me, I don't know, like does a Bigfoot care if it opens a door properly and then latches it, or would a skinwalker care more? Like maybe a skinwalker would care more because it's like, hey, I need more chickens for sacrifices later, so I'll save these chickens for later.
Yeah. Well, okay, so there was one footprint found by the chicken coop. It looked like a bare human footprint, but wide, really wide. And it wasn't super gigantic. It wasn't like a gigantic footprint, but it was a bare footprint with an indentation. So it looked like something that was pretty heavy. But there were no prints going into that cave. And it literally felt as though you were stepping into a portal as you walked down there into that cave. Now, there were no prints once you got in, and the flooring of the cave was all mud. And it was thick mud because we all had on our hiking boots and our muck boots and stuff. And we were like, the guys, I was with a bunch of dudes, okay, cryptid warfare guys. What's up, y'all? They went kind of in the front. Okay, they're more like expert cavers than me. I was just there for support, man. I was there to observe and, deal with whatever we had to deal with, because I had actually had to consult with, I didn't have to, but I felt like I did, my Native American shaman, medicine man friend of mine, William Nighthawk. I gave him a holler. And I asked him, I needed to consult with someone who knew about skinwalkers. Okay, because this is something that I had not dealt with before. Being in the research field, you kind of have to be prepared for anything out in the woods, because you never know what you're going to happen upon. And I know that I research places that are full of high strangeness. We have lots of Bigfoots in our areas. We have dogman sightings and reports. We have a lot of UFOs and ETs, but I had not come across a skinwalker yet. So I consulted with him. He gave me a lot of really good information, and it basically, I was asked not to share it all with the public, but it entails a spiritual battle. Okay, so this is on a spiritual level. This is not just battling in the 3-dimensional reality that we're in. This is a spiritual battle. It's almost like getting geared up to go fight vampires. For real.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm going to have to call Drew and talk to him about this. I find this very fascinating. Well, speaking of skinwalkers, you mentioned your team several times, and I know you're part of different teams, and you run teams and part of other teams. One of the teams that you work with is a former guest in the show, Trey Hudson, and literally I have his book sitting here. I didn't plan this, but his book is sitting here, and it's the Meadow Project, and on the subtitle is Explorations into the South's Skinwalker Ranch. And it's like, when I first came across this Meadow Project, I was like, the South Skinwalker Ranch, what the heck is this? And I had the conversation with Trey, and he told some stories that I was like, man, if you're telling the truth, this is wild. Well, literally, I woke up this morning knowing I was going to be talking to you, did not know you were part of Trey's team. And so I am very interested to hear your perceptions of the Meadow, your experiences with it. And from what I understand, you were part of the team when part of the team went into the portal. So I would love for you to kind of share from your perspective what it's been like working with the Meadow and what your experiences are with it.
I mean, I have a million experiences out there. And I actually have been a part of anomalous studies and observation group from the very beginning, day one. And I think we kind of go out more with that team than my other teams at this point. Well, I'm with North Georgia cryptid researchers too, and we do a lot of outings together and stuff. But we spend a lot of time out in the woods, and a lot of time out at the Meadow. And all of us have different experience. We have the same experiences out there, but we all have different experiences, and they range from like Sasquatch, but it's a lot of like ET stuff, ET, UFOs, the portal. I had an incident where I was walking into the Meadow. You have to hike in, okay, pretty good ways. And as I'm hiking in one night, we're walking past this area where there's like some running water or some water there, and so there's like this white noise. And I had two people with me, and I heard a woman's voice from across the way go, "Time travel," like really loud. And I was like, good Lord. I was like, first of all, there's no way for a woman to get over there in the middle of the night. I mean, I guess they could, but it's dangerous, and I wouldn't do it. Okay. Or at least I didn't think I'd do it, because the two people that were with me didn't hear it. And, but I heard it loud as day. I heard it. And I thought, well, man, that was really weird. But I kind of tucked it to the side. I made my little report. I was like, hey, I heard this. And weeks later, that's all I could think about was that woman's voice. Like, why would some woman yell time travel at me? And then I realized that was my voice.
No way.
Yeah, I swear. Yes.
So
it was my voice.
Did you? Okay, so were you time traveling? How is that possible?
Good question. Yeah, well, hopefully I get my hands on some time travel technology in the future. And I go back and I yell time travel. And I'm going to have on my snake chaps and my muck boots to get over there. But darn it, I may do it. Or it could also be that a lot of us on that team, are trained in remote viewing. And that's something that I do a lot. I love remote viewing. It's the type of remote viewing that our military uses in the Indigo Swan methods. And I love it. And there's a thing that we can do when we remote view called a deep mind probe. And it's very possible that there's a point where I remote view that night. And I go and I do a deep mind probe and I tell myself, time travel, and I can hear it or something. But I haven't done that yet. So I'm still waiting for the day,
I mean, like, the fact that you had that experience, isn't that like kind of like, I don't know, like, I don't even know how to describe, but it's almost as if you're setting yourself up then at some point to yell time travel just to fulfill that prophecy. Like, it's self-fulfilling prophecy almost, I
guess so.
That's wild.
It's weird, right?
That's wild.
Well, see, because that's where it's like the time is so weird out there. And this is something that just keeps coming up in my life is this time travel, timeline shifts, the keepers of the timelines, there's something, and I'm not saying I'm a time traveler. I don't know. At this point, I don't know what I am anymore. Okay, because everything is so gray and fuzzy now.
Yeah, so you haven't reached the point in time yet where you're a time traveler, but that's not to say in the near future you won't be.
Sure.
Who knows, right? I mean, so along the lines of time traveling, obviously, I mean, you probably thought about it enough. Do you think it would require some kind of device technology to do, or do you think that there's more of a state of consciousness connected to remote viewing?
Both. Okay, so it could go either way. It's either or. Or, I mean, maybe there's a third, route. I don't know. But I would say probably, logically speaking, and this is logically from my standpoint, it would be more of a remote viewing kind of thing because the other people didn't hear it. Okay, they didn't hear it. I heard it very loudly. But I also know that there is time travel technology, and I'm very much into this, and why wouldn't I do it if I got my hands on it, and do something like that? I mean, it'd be a perfect place to do it at the Meadow. It's such a place of high strangeness. My team has documented what we consider to be a portal and sent 2 of our teammates into it. And I happened to, full disclosure, I was there that week, but I left right before that happened to go home because I had a little kid at home. And but they were having an incident with the portal in the Meadow, I was at home watching orbs floating around my son's head. And I have that on video of orbs. I had never had orbs in my house like that. I mean, I had orbs in my house, but not floating around my kid. And my son, here's the weird thing. I mean, it's all weird, but a really interesting thing is that my son and I were watching them. And I thought it was like a bug, or I thought they were bugs because I was so confused as to what these things were flying around my kid. My son was going, "Mom, ball, Mom," and following them with his finger. But his dad was filming them on his camera, on his phone, and could not see them with his naked eyes, but he could see them through the screen on his phone. So my son and I were tuned into that frequency where we could actually see them with our eyes, but his dad couldn't.
Wow. That really kind of presents a very interesting dichotomy there, where you have 3 people having the same experience, but they're all experiencing it differently. So you're saying your husband couldn't see it with his eyes, but he could see it in the moment through the phone. It's not like he recorded it with the phone and then saw it later. He could actually see it in the moment?
Yes. He could only see it on the screen of his phone. And he says that in the video. He says in the video, I can only see it through my phone or something like that. Like he's like, I can't see it. I can only see it through my screen. And at some point, one of the orbs shoots towards his phone and the camera powers off.
Really?
Yeah. You could see it in the film.
So how many orbs were flying around at one time?
I believe there were 2. I didn't see any more. I don't think there were more. there were two that I could see. And you can see them in the video circling around my kid. And my kid was on the elliptical machine. He was looking all cute. You know, he was happy that mama was home, you know, from my trip out in the meadow. And so he was just, you know, scooting along on the elliptical, you know, and it's my ex-husband now, but he was filming with his camera and he was just filming my son looking cute, you know, on the elliptical machine. And all of a sudden these orbs showed up and I got called into the room to go observe it. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So the fact that you had the two orbs showing up the same night that the portal happened, do you think that those orbs could have been your teammates or somehow connected to you in a way?
Oh my God, I never even thought about that. My teammates as they walked into the portal. That's
they
weird.
walked into a portal.
That's really cool. I never thought of that. Yeah.
Like you were the only teammate that wasn't there at the moment, right?
Yes. I mean, I guess so. Yeah. I left that right before that evening before they went out. Yeah.
I mean, who knows? I don't know what that connection could be, but I mean, it's just interesting that the night and the time that the two teammates walk into a portal, you are now at the same time having two orbs flying around your house. I find that interesting.
I like the way you think. That's really connecting the dots right there.
Before we started recording, I told you we get weird. I told you.
Super weird. I love it.
The weirder, the better for me, you know? So let's go back to the meadow. The night that this happened, you weren't there, but what you were told, if you could relay to us what you were told had happened. Okay. We heard this story through Trey, but I'd like to hear it from your mouth as well as to what happened that night.
And we have a video too of this, and it's not really public yet, but Trey shows that video at conferences that we go to and speak at. So, okay, so I have, by the way, I've brought just about everybody that was there that night onto my shows, and I have had them give their firsthand accounts of all of their different angles and views of this story. Okay, even Bob Grumpy, he just passed away recently, and I have a wonderful interview with him on my YouTube channel where he discusses everything that ever happened to him in the meadow. He was a high strangeness magnet, okay, to say the least. But I pretty much got everybody's angle from this, except for the two. I have Bob's. Both of the gentlemen who walked into the portal have passed away now. And so, okay, so the team, we usually go out, we start off as like our whole team, and then we break off into smaller teams. And we will go post up around the meadow. And to describe this to your audience who are not familiar with the meadow is an undisclosed location deep into the woods. And it's a lot of very dense trees, forest, and you hike in, and then there's this like open meadow. And it's pretty big. It's like, 3 acres or 4 acres? I don't know. It's kind of a big open area. And, but it's big enough to kind of post some, teams of like 2 or 3 around. And we just go out there and we observe. Okay. We're not out there like provoking cryptids and doing any kind of weird like rituals or anything. We're just out there observing for the most part. And, excuse me. And so the team goes out there, they break off into small groups. Then we had a big crew out there that weekend for whatever reason. And the team that stayed at the front of the meadow, it was our friend David, our friend Terry, and Kristen. They were one team. And they were posted up in the very front of the meadow. And they had Tim and Bob back on the back side, and Lee was back there, and Trey was out there on the other side, and a few people. And Daryl was out there. But they were sitting out there. I don't think there's a whole lot of action going on. And a lot of people have like their thermal scopes, their night vision, FLIRs, so we could see in the dark. Okay. And so one of the teammates, David, was looking directly into the meadow. And this is open field. Okay. And he noticed something that was off. And he described it as, when I've seen the video, it's a square or a cube that was only visible through his FLIR device. And so he thought he was seeing things at first. So he asked Terry to look through his night vision thing. And he looked. He was like, okay, yeah, there's a gigantic cube in the middle of this field. What is that? So they radioed over to the guys across the field and they said, hey, there's something over here. You guys need to go check this out. And so 2 or 3 of the guys walked over toward, they were guided to where this cube was. Now this cube was like the size of like a small shed, kind of. It almost looked like it had a door on it. Potentially even like windows. It had like crosses on the sides of it. It was really weird. Okay. But it almost looked, dare I say, like man-made. It didn't look natural. Okay. It didn't look natural. And so they guided Bob and Trey, went over to it. And these are guys who are former military special forces. Okay. Highly trained in, tracking, search and rescue, remote viewing even. Okay. They're very aware of their surroundings. They're very aware of their environment. Any kind of slight energetic shifts, they were fully aware of it. And so they were guided over to this thing, and unbeknownst to them, as they walked over to it, well, Kristen had actually pulled out her FLIR device or thermal, and she started recording. Okay, so she was actually watching all this go down and recording it as the guys walked over to it. And you will see, if you ever seen, I'm sure, Tony, you'll see the video, I'm sure, if you haven't already. But they walk over to this cube. You'll see it, I'm sure. If they walk over to it, and as they get up to this cube, their heat signatures disappear. Now, if you know anything about like night vision, thermal things, like the heat signatures just don't disappear into thin air when you are in an open field. And if you were to go behind a tree or something, that's one thing, but there's nothing there to go behind. And the 2 gentlemen disappeared. Well, the way they described it, and they didn't know they were inside anything. They didn't know they had disappeared. Okay. But they described it as like walking through a thick black velvet curtain, and the temperature changed. I think it said it got colder. Bob always said the stars had disappeared. He couldn't see the stars anymore. And then the vegetation on the ground changed. So it went from like muddy and grassy to smooth ground. And so I think within a very short period, within seconds, a minute, they realized there was something off. And so they backed out. They backed out slowly and boom, got out of there. And their heat signatures popped back up. Yeah.
That's wild.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
All right. So I recently heard, I think it was David Paulides say how with the missing people cases, if you are walking through these areas, like say you're hiking a trail in the mountains, and you notice the environment changes around you, and especially if you're with somebody, he suggested that you stop moving, sit down with your backs against each other, and wait it out, and wait for the environment to kind of change back. Do you think, based off of these guys sharing with you their experience, that would have been the case, or was it something that they needed to get out of?
They needed to get out. They definitely needed to get out. I wouldn't just sit there. I mean, that's just my advice. That's my opinion. Because as soon as they reappeared, the box shrunk down in size and it disappeared and it floated off.
Whoa.
So they would have probably gone with it. I mean, I don't know for sure.
How do you explain that to the wives? Jeez.
Well, we have to come up with protocol after that. You can imagine.
Yeah.
I don't know if Trey mentioned this, but the protocol, that meeting went like, well, who has the best life insurance? Yeah. And it also involved tying a rope around somebody's waist and everybody holding on to it. I mean, it's like
really
primitive. Yeah. It's kind of funny, but it's also not, it's really not. Both of those gentlemen have passed away. Bob just passed away, within the month, like a month ago, and Tim passed away a couple of years ago. Both of them got health conditions, and I can't say it was because of that, but there are spikes of radiation when we have things like that happen. When we have any kind of like paranormal stuff happen out there, including the portal. Okay. We call that the portal.
How long have you guys spent out in the portal at one time? So, you guys do your investigations. Is this like a few nights, a week, a month? I mean, at one point of you guys go out there, what's the longest you've spent at the Meadow in one time, at one shot?
Me personally, like 3 or 4 days, me personally. The whole team, they'll go out for like weeks at a time, like a week at a time or something at the most. Yeah.
Okay.
But it just depends. It depends on what we're doing, because we do like training, we do tracking training and stuff like that. And just depends on what the objectives are, because we're a real research team. So we're out there doing real research, and so it's best to stay out there as long as you can. Of course, my team likes to go out there when it's like 20 below zero and 120 degrees, either or, So we're out there in all conditions, all times of year, like every season. We're out there. We're not just out there when the weather's nice and the leaves are changing color. You know what I mean? We're out there like the team has been out there in blizzards before at the Meadow.
I was recently told that we need to stop going out doing our trips when it's freezing out and raining, because apparently that's when we do ours, is usually when it's like super cold out, and they're like, can we get nice weather for once? So
that's not true.
Yeah, but I asked that because you guys had that experience with the cube, and it's only been one time from what I understand. I'm wondering, how replicatable is that experience? I mean, if you guys had that experience, it's not that you had the experience in that field by accident. It's because that field, this Meadow, has a lot of strange things happening. That's why you guys targeted it for your research, never expecting to have a cube portal pop up. So it's just one piece of a bunch of strange things happening in the Meadow. And I just wonder, because of the history of that area having such activity, to me tells me that cube portal probably wasn't the first time that popped up there. It was just the first time you guys experienced it there. Is that how you feel too?
Maybe. I mean, I tend to feel like that is not natural. Okay. And, and since all this happened, I mean, I have been really focused on portals. Okay, with my research. And I was the first time I ever spoke publicly. I never meant to go public with any of this ever. And I was hanging out with one of my girlfriends who was volunteering at a disclosure conference. And I just went to go hang out, okay, at a planning meeting. And I was asked, they found out there that we were talking about, someone had asked me about my research with Bigfoot, because they knew I was a Bigfooter. And the guy was like, well, that sounds like the Meadow Project. And I was like, oh, are you reading that book, The Meadow Project? I was like, well, do you know who Jessica J is? And he was like, yeah. And he looked at me, he was like, oh my God, that was you? And he was dumbfounded, right? And I was dumbfounded. I was like, oh my God, people are reading the book and stuff. That's awesome. But yeah, so I was asked to speak at that conference, to be one of their speakers. And I did. And so I forgot, what was your question? I got sidetracked. That happens.
That's a good question. What was the question? It was something to do with was it the first time the portal popped up? And
yes.
Right.
Well,
that's what the question was.
I was going to say it's not natural. I'm sorry. I get sidetracked sometimes because there's a lot going on in my head right now. Okay. There's a lot.
Fine.
We have so much going on.
I wish I had the same excuse for having mind slips.
Oh, I know. Mind slips, time slips, whatever. Maybe I had a time slip too. It was a time slip. So time edit. But yeah, I tend to feel like it's not natural. Okay. And one of my big things is like national parks and stuff. And it's not just national parks, state parks. What is going on with the missing people there? Okay, because a lot of times when we do our research all over the South, okay, and we have spots all over the place. We have several that my other teams we go to a lot, like I'm not going to give our locations away, but in the mountains and stuff, of course. where when we're doing like remote viewing targets, let's just say, a lot of times I will stumble upon underground facilities. Okay. Underground facilities. And those are often tied to cryptid sightings. Now, could that have been some sort of reverse technology or something, or, something to trap people in? I mean, were those two men targeted? That's a big question I have. Were the two men that went inside of it like targeted or something, even though they were sent over there? I don't know. I mean, could they have been? I mean, one of them had some scientific background and stuff going on. I mean, there's really no telling what's going on. But yeah, so David Paulides, who wrote the Missing 411 series, there is a movie that came out not too long ago where they're talking about the UFO connection, I believe. And there's one person in there, somebody sent me a clip. I haven't had the time to watch the whole movie, but someone sent me a clip of a person who had an experience with a cube-shaped UFO, I think. And so it led me to think, what if that cube was not just like a portal? What if it was like a UFO or a craft or something too? Of course, we call it a portal because we just don't really know what else to call it. Because everything changed as soon as those men walked into it. And then they walked back out. So,
I mean, yeah, could a craft be a portal? I think that they both could be the same thing. It's we don't know enough about these crafts that people are encountering to know what's going on the inside of that. We have like the Bob Lazars come out and talk about working on them and things like that, but has Bob Lazar ever seen these crafts 100% fully operational, been in the ins and outs? I don't think he has. Because he was specifically working on specific things, and everything's compartmentalized in when it comes to this kind of stuff. So if he has one job, another person has another job. They don't talk to each other. They're all working on separate things that for the grand picture of it all. But I don't think he recalls talking about seeing these things on the inside fully operational. He understands the mechanics of it from his specific job that he was doing. But if I remember correctly, he said there was like 9 other crafts that were there in the same hangar or something like that he never had the opportunity to even look at because it wasn't his part of his job. So I mean, who knows what these things are on the inside? Who knows what the properties are? And also we have the disclosure type. I hate to call it disclosure because I don't know how much they're actually disclosing to begin with, but you have these whistleblowers that are coming out and saying what they know. And I have some serious concerns about these whistleblowers. I think that if they are truly whistleblowers, just like Bob Lazar was only privy to certain pieces of information to the grand picture of it, I think these whistleblowers are in the same vein. They are whistleblowing about what they know, but do they know the full picture? They might think they know the full picture, but do they really? They may not. But with some of the things they're saying, they are coming out and discussing how these crafts that people are seeing are not necessarily always from a far off galaxy, that they are interdimensional and they are coming through other realms. So if these crafts be coming through from another realm, let's just call the doorway between this realm and the realm they're coming from the portal. Could the craft itself be a portal in itself so that when whatever is inside the portal, it's not necessarily in this realm? So how do I say this? So all right, here's a good example. People are talking about seeing these metallic spheres, and we have video and pictures of it. Jeremy Corbell has been recently talking about them and showing pictures of them. Military has pictures of them. A whistleblower came out saying that these are unmanned drones from another realm because our direct energy weapons have been shooting down their manned drones. So what if these UFOs not all of them, but maybe some of them are portals within themselves that are unmanned. And the cube, I'm just thinking out loud here, okay? You don't have to agree with me. Most people probably don't. But the cube itself, say the cube itself, it was a craft. Because you mentioned how it didn't seem natural. What if the cube itself was an unmanned drone? And when they walked into it, they literally walked into the unmanned drone portal into another state of existence.
I think you're onto
Very
something.
interesting.
Okay. Oh my gosh. I have so much to say right now over everything that you just went over. Okay. Well, so as far as these orbs, okay, because we encounter a lot of orbs out in the field. Well, one of our other teammates, Matt, okay, Matthew Delph, he just went public with something that I've been begging him to show publicly for a long time. I was like, please just show this. You can come on my show if you want. But he was given a video and was asked to keep it private by someone who has now passed away, who was with MUFON, okay, and one of his best friends, and it was from a private somebody's backyard. And it shows this. I talk about this all the time. And I was going to bring up my friend Barry a while ago. Because my friend Barry Littleton, he and I do a lot of research together on these remote viewing targets and stuff. And just, I like to work with people whose hearts are in the right place, and we just really want to solve some of these mysteries, really want to connect the dots. Well, those are the people I work with. Okay, those are the people I work with. Matthew Dell was one of those. Okay, but Matt has a video that he finally released. We were both speaking at the Georgia Bigfoot Conference this past May or April. And he showed this video. He's not going to put it online, but he finally released it publicly at the conference. And it shows, it's a video of somebody's backyard, like I said, and an orb shoots past the camera. And it lands on the ground and it turns into a gray alien. And it runs around in a circle. And then it turns back into an orb and then it shoots past the camera again. And he has the video, and it's not fake. This is the real deal, Holyfield.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've seen the video?
Oh, yeah. I beg him to show it to me every time I see him. I'm like, can I see that video? Can you show it to me again? And my friend Barry,
make sure
too.
I'm not crazy.
We talk about it all the time. I mean, I bring that video up all the time. It's real. Yeah, I've seen it.
So that really. So are you saying that the alien in the video, I mean, I'm not saying you know anything, because I mean, what do we really know?
Nothing.
But
right.
Yeah, but
I can tell you what I saw.
Is your suspicion that the alien itself in the video might be some kind of drone that it was able to turn in and out of from an orb to an alien kind of thing? Or do you think the alien itself was riding inside an orb and the orb is the portal? I mean,
I know it's hard to get your head to wrap around this stuff, especially when you see something like that, because here we are trying to figure out what orbs are. Now, there's so many different types, and this orb looks more metallic. Okay, so it's solid. And a lot of the orbs that we encounter are balls of light, or they're translucent, transparent, iridescent in color. Okay, but this one looks more metallic, and it looked pretty big. Okay, but I mean, when I mean big, it's like that. Okay, like volleyball size or smaller. And it shoots past the camera. And I've seen aliens. I have been face to face with at least 3 ETs up close. And this thing
talk about burying the lead.
Yeah. Well,
I want to hear about this at some point.
And
Go
it's
ahead.
because of the Bigfoot field research that I do. It involves ET activity. And once you tune into this frequency, is all I can think of. I think I tuned into the frequency. I'm here. Okay. I'm open to it. And I started having ET visits after I started doing the Bigfoot field research. But this is, okay, so we've got a solid ball that turns into a gray, and like I said, I've seen grays, I've seen aliens, what I assume to be grays. This thing had a big head, and its body, they don't move normally. And when I'm talking with people about their dogman sightings, A lot of times they say they look cartoonish. Okay, a lot of these cryptids don't look like they're in our reality almost. It's otherworldly. And that's how I can describe this little ET or whatever this being is. I really don't like to label things because we don't know what it is, but I'd say the closest thing I could compare it to would be a gray alien. And when it runs around, it doesn't look normal. It doesn't look like a person running. It's like its head's back and its legs are out in front of it and it's flopping around. It's really weird. But you can't deny that it looks like an alien. And what else would have done that? And it's fascinating. I think there's a lot of like missing pieces of the puzzle that people are scared to put out to the public. People have this evidence.
And I think traditionally, at least, they've been scared because it hasn't been well received to let things cross lines. So Bigfoot stays over Bigfoot, UFOs stay in the Bigfoot lane or the UFO lane, and they don't intersect, And I do think that's changing. And maybe it's just changing in my world. Maybe in my world here in my house, it's changing. So people who come to my house on a weekly basis, they're used to it. But for me, like, you tell me that if you told me Bigfoot and Dogman were sighted together at the same time that a radical UFO experience happened where they're pretty sure there were ET involved, I'd be like, yep, it all makes sense to me. Keep going. That's how I look at it. I'm like, yeah, this all makes sense. Okay, so you had these up close encounters with these entities, and you mentioned about not wanting to categorize things certain ways. I understand that because traditionally speaking, you say aliens or ETs, you think about outer space, not as much interdimensional. If you say interdimensional, it gets cloudy as far as definitions go. I think maybe that's where we're at, where the lines are starting to get crossed. And so we're starting to try to figure out how do we define things in a way that makes sense, is understandable to everybody, but isn't misleading people on what I'm trying to say. Because I've crossed the similar path. That's why when I'm referring to aliens, the idea of aliens, as far as these beings and the craft, I just call it entities. Because just how, in a legal sense, when you're talking about a business and a contract, the entity, meaning a specific thing, that's how I describe these things. And I also describe, especially if I'm thinking interdimensionally when it comes to cryptids, I say entities. Because I don't want to say something that is already putting people, because I have to rehash things all the time. And I'm sure you do too. And for me, when it comes to cryptids, when I say cryptid, I am not always, sometimes I am, but not always talking about a physical creature that lives in the woods, that leaves footprints. So that's why I say entity more and more nowadays, because it just leaves it more general. Until I have a better definition, a word to define things, I say entity. But I understand why you have the hesitations, because it's like, alien, sure, but you may not be referring to something that came from Venus.
Well, yeah. Well, in all of my research, I've done so much research, and I've done a whole lot of like remote viewing targets for some that are blind targets. I don't know what these things are. I get a set of coordinates, and I get a lot of data out of this stuff. And I believe, I'm starting to think that like ETs don't come from outer space. I think they're here on Earth or in another dimension. And I know that we do have I was going to say weaponized. They are weaponized. We have natural portals here all over Earth. And I believe that the cryptids, especially the Sasquatch, the Bigfoots, they know how to access those natural portals. ETs know how to access those portals. I mean, then we got the whole inner Earth aspect, But I mean, when I went public with my research, I came out like guns blazing. I was like, okay, Bigfoot's real. I think they're interdimensional. There's a connection to ETs. Everything is connected. Everything. I mean, when I was a kid, I would wake up and have ghosts standing around my bed. People, full body apparitions, full body people that were wearing, period clothing, like Victorian era clothing and stuff. And they would talk to me telepathically. Well, now as I got older and I got into the research, I would wake up and I'd have ETs in my room doing the same thing. So now I look back and I'm like, well, were those ghosts actually ETs the whole time?
Yep. I totally understand your sentiment. You're talking about the era of clothing they're wearing.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's something that I started thinking about is under traditional thinking when it comes to hauntings and ghosts and, you know, let's just say somebody who died in the house and now they haunt it. Why don't we ever see ghosts of cavemen? Why don't we ever see caveman ghosts? We always see them back to the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. Why don't we see ghosts of a guy dressed in a lion's cloth, dragging a club, all hairy, acting like a wild man? Why don't we ever see ghosts of that? If ghosts are only dead people who haven't moved on yet, then why do we only get it to a certain point in time? Maybe like it's just a thought, you know?
Oh, I've got something to even make you, okay, this is going to be even more weird. Do Sasquatch and dogmen become ghosts? Are there spirits of cryptids? That's a real question because upon doing some research on, let's just say, the Fort Pierce dogman down in Florida. Okay, there's a gentleman that was doing a Facebook Live one night. I think his name's Blue. Okay, Blue was doing a Facebook Live, and he was talking about how he had seen some weird stuff, and he was like, "I'm not just going to talk about it. I'm going to show you." And he opens up his back door, his front door, and as he opens it he puts his camera out facing towards the wood line, the tree line, and something runs past the camera, and it clearly looks like, to me, it looked like a and this was given to me as a remote viewing target, and I picked up on like a spirit or something. Okay, but also potentially a dog man as well. So Barry and my friend Barry came on my show, and we were throwing it out there like, well, can a dog man be a spirit? Like, are they spiritual beings, or where do they go when they die? You know, it's stuff we need to be talking about, right? I mean, it just makes sense. But I mean, do people think about that aspect of it? I do.
I can't say I ever thought about the soul or the spirit of a dog man and what happens to it when it dies. I just think about dying it. Like
Dying
it, killing it,
unaliving it.
I have silver bullets for a reason. So
right. Well, there's also the thing. Okay, so I'm really big on the frequency thing, the vibrational frequency of us as humans. Okay, and that's why I think that I've been attuned to the paranormal my entire life. And there's, I mentioned that my son and I were seeing the orbs, and his father was not. Okay, I'm not saying his dad was low vibe, but he might have been pretty low vibe. And I think I'm pretty high vibe, me and my son both. So was that a factor? Was it our vibrational frequencies, like our energy? We're on we're on a frequency like tuning a radio, right? You change the station. He wasn't on our station. You know what I mean? Like we had tuned into something different. And maybe that's how these cryptids are existing in our world, in our reality, in this matrix that we live in. Maybe they're on just a different frequency. It's like another dimension. It's a different step up. And sometimes we can see them and they phase in and out. Sometimes we can't. I mean, we're as humans, like we don't have like the rods and cones in our eyes potentially to see things that are right in front of our face sometimes. So it could be a physical thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is interesting. I had a guy on the show. I can't remember what episode it was. It was recently, within the last, I would say, few months. I think it was episode 626. I called it Cryptid Wars and Cosmic Revelations. That's what it was. Can't remember his name right now. I think it was Keith or something. It was a members episode, but he was having interactions with all types of beings. interdimensionally. He was being taken into other states of existence, dare I say realms. And he was having interactions with what we would call cryptids. He was saying to me on the show how he was in communication with these upright walking dog creatures. And they were conveying to him that they've been around for a very long time. Now, this is in another realm, interdimensionally. Okay, so what does that do with the dog man and spirit? I'm not sure. Is he talking to the spirit of a dog man, or is he talking to a dog man in another realm? I'm not sure. But the dog man, dog creature, the lichen, whatever it was, on numerous occasions would reveal information to him and talk to him about a long time ago there being a great war between them and these feline cat creatures, and how there was a great catastrophic event that happened that split the land apart. And that's how the war ended, because these cat beings wound up being on like a different continent. And what he was describing was very interesting, because if you look at across the pond over in the Middle East, the jinn is something that's described a lot. And one of the very common things it's described as is a large black panther cat. And it really made me wonder what these things were that he was communicating with, and how much truth was there. And so along the lines of the spirit of Dogman or anything like that, it makes you wonder what people like him are communicating with. Is it an entity that is alive in another realm, or is it the remains of that entity from long ago? It's very interesting. It's very, very interesting. I want to hit on this. I mean, listen, I told you before we started recording, and after this conversation, the offer remains. Like, I think the next time you come on the show should be in studio, and we bring like a whole crew. Maybe we'll bring Trey up. Maybe we'll bring some of the team members up and make it a whole thing. But because there's several things that I would love to talk to you about, but I don't want to fade away from something you've been bringing up a lot, which is the remote viewing. How did you get involved in remote viewing, and what is that process like for you? And what are you meaning by things like you are given coordinates to remote view something? Is this something that, like, are you remote viewing for, police departments to solve crimes, or are you remote viewing because, somebody hit you up in the email saying something and you're remote viewing for them?
Mm-hmm. Oh, very interesting questions there. Yeah. No, I don't take targets from anybody. I don't. I have to know that they have to know how to task me targets. There's a process, and there's only a couple of people that I would ever let give me targets, because there's a lot of stuff that's actually kind of off limits. Okay, when it comes to remote viewing. So, how I got started in remote viewing. Okay, one of my first Bigfoot teams, and I learned through my Bigfoot team. Okay, my Bigfoot field research team. I was out, one of the first times I ever went Bigfooting, I had an incident that I think we had some missing time. Like, we had some weird stuff go down. Okay, there was a whole lot of activity going on. It wasn't just Bigfoot. And it involved a low-flying UFO. I had a recorder on my knee. I was hiding out in the woods with my partner, one of the guys on the team. And I guess during the recordings, we were trying to figure out, like, why was our equipment was messing up with our time. Like, our digital equipment, like mine went forward an hour and his went backwards an hour, by the end of the night. And we had some weird stuff that happened. We had this orb that was kind of like floating across the side of the mountain across from us. And we were seeing UFOs up in the sky and stuff, like way up in the sky. And we had that orb thing that was floating around us. And so I guess on that recording, after I listened to it later, I was listening to it with the head of my research team. And you could hear at some point, like my partner and I quit kind of talking. We quit talking or whispering, and it sounded like bottle rockets were being shot off all around us. Okay, in this recording, but we didn't hear that with our own ears at all. And we were both quiet when that happened too. So it made me think, well, maybe we got put to sleep or we got abducted or something. I don't know. Something weird happened. Well, the head of the team was like, well, hey, why this is really odd. He was a remote viewer, and he was like, well, why don't I teach you guys remote viewing? And that way it'll be, and it's not going to be easy, but if you guys want to learn remote viewing, I'll teach you. And it's going to be, we've spent years learning remote viewing as a team. Okay, so we remote view. Trey remote views. He's a remote viewer too. And so we spent years learning different modes of remote viewing. Now, this is a type of remote viewing that our military uses. And for people who are not familiar with remote viewing, it's what the military used. I think they started using it, that I know of, back during the Cold War, when Russia had psychic spies. And of course, the United States was like, well, we need psychic spies too, right? And you can use remote viewing, and what it is you're given a set of coordinates. Okay, now there's different definitions. Like some people say they remote view, but they don't do the scientific methods that we use to remote view. They just look into things psychically and intuitively. Well, we're actually using our psychic faculties. Okay, we're using our psychic abilities to scientifically locate, with scientific methods, to locate unknown targets. Okay, and what I mean by that is that, take for instance, the target is like the Statue of Liberty. Okay, I need to describe what the Statue of Liberty is. That's a practice target, right? And so somebody will take a picture of the Statue of Liberty, and they'll put it in an envelope, and they'll write on the outside of it 8 random numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, usually 8 numbers. And all I'm given are those 8 numbers. Okay, and so I sit down with my pen and a stack of printer paper, and I have charts that I write out, and I sit there, and then I write those numbers down, and I do some automatic writing, and all this information floods in. All the sensory data floods in, and I write, and there's a place on those charts for everything that I'm experiencing. Okay, and I don't think. Okay, I try not to think. I just let the information go. It's like I'm a channel kind of for the information to flow. And I have a little box where I can write down how I'm interpreting the data. It's called analytic overlay. And a lot of times the analytic overlay will be my target, actually, because I don't have anything but those numbers. And we use this to help solve cold cases, with law enforcement cases, find missing people. I'm able to communicate with missing people. Okay, and you got to remember, I don't know what these targets are, but if I detect a person or a consciousness of some sort, I can ask that person questions. And I have located bodies and stuff before. So it's really interesting. Now we use this in the field, okay, because it's a wonderful tool to have in your tool belt when you're researching cryptids and the high strangeness. Because look, we're able to go in, we can look into areas before we go, and we research, we can see what kind of activity we have going on there. I'm given targets of, alleged dogman attacks. Okay, I think the majority of those attacks that I've looked into, there's some that are, unspecified animal attacks. Yeah, some of them absolutely could have been dogman, for sure. At least 3 of them that I know of, I think could have been dogman, but the majority of them have been big cats.
Really?
Okay, so I'm able to look into stuff like that, and I love doing that. I love it. But I only take targets from, the head of my team, and I've trained personally a couple of people to teach me, or not teach me, I've taught them how to assign me targets. And yeah, I've only gotten in trouble with one. We're not, for whatever reason, they say, don't ever remote view the moon. Okay. And that's just kind of one of those things. You don't remote view the moon. So what did I do? I tried to remote view the moon. So yeah, I won't do that again.
Why? Don't leave me hanging.
Good
Why? What
question.
happened?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know nothing about nothing. Yeah, it's weird though, right?
Are you saying? Oh, hold on a second. You're not getting away with it. You're not getting off the hook there. Are you saying you don't know nothing because you're not allowed to say, or are you saying you don't know nothing because you don't remember?
I remember it was. I remember I had remote viewed the Apollo 11 moon landing. That's what it was. It wasn't the actual moon as a whole. It was that moon landing, and I got a gentle reminder about 2 hours before I was about to do a live show on it. Keep my mouth shut. Okay, I know.
By
I
who?
can't. I'm not going to get into details. It doesn't matter.
It matters.
Just-
Are you kidding
but
me?
this-
It matters.
I know, but it's something I probably shouldn't talk about. I know, because it
All right, okay.
made me sweat bullets. Okay, so it's just there's certain things, and I'm about full disclosure. Okay, I am, and I went on with my show, but for whatever reason, like I talk about cryptids and I talk about dogman attacks and Bigfoot eating people and stuff. But it was that Apollo 11 moon landing, man. I was told I was being watched for sure by some higher ups and stuff. So yeah, I had to watch what I said. I
Higher
did.
up-
I just like I have a healthy dose of respect. Okay, let's just put it that way.
Higher up humans or entities?
Yeah, humans. I think it was humans. I don't know. They might be entities. I have no idea.
Well, how'd the movie set look like to you? Hey, I'll let it go. I'll let it
I
go.
can see this. Honestly, I can see this. I do believe that there are humans on the moon. Okay, there are humans on the moon. I don't think that they get there the way we're told. That's all I'm going to say right there. Yeah.
Maybe like a cube portal?
Cube portal. Well, okay, so I was actually given a blind coordinate remote viewing target. That's what we call them, coordinate remote viewing targets of Earth's weaponized natural portals. That was one of my targets.
Earth's
And
weaponized natural portals. Okay.
yes. And right when I got into that target, I was on the sun. I was remote viewing the sun, which is interesting, which actually says a lot, right? Because if I'm remote viewing Earth's weaponized portals, what am I doing on the sun? Well, they say the sun's a portal, right? But there were things coming in and out of that portal, and it was connected to Earth. Yeah.
I've never heard the sun is a portal.
Oh, you've
So
never
you're
heard
saying no. So you're saying that
Yep.
that you remote viewed the sun and there were things coming out of it?
I did. I remote viewed Earth's weaponized natural portals, and my data was I was on the sun. I was right there at the sun, remote viewing the sun. So that's where the coordinates took me. It was a wormhole. Like I was shot through a wormhole. I mean, in the target, it starts off like me going through being shot through like a wormhole and ending up at the sun.
You're
I'm
killing
just
me.
saying.
This is
I know,
wild.
right?
This is wild. So
It's fun stuff.
if you remote viewed one of Earth's weaponized natural portals, and that portal wormholed you to the sun. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. My mind's blown.
I know. Much to ponder, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. Okay, so what is a weaponized natural portal? Is that like a natural portal on Earth that humans have weaponized or entities from other realms have weaponized? And why are you being tasked to remote view it?
Oh, I think it's all of it. I think it could be ETs, interdimensional beings. I mean, it could be anything. But I had mentioned that I believe that cryptids can access Earth's natural portals. Okay, well, think about how they could be weaponized. Like, think about in terms of missing people. Think about like, well, what if somebody could just open up a portal, grab somebody, pull them in, and shut that portal?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that could be where some of these missing people are going. And I know it may sound crazy to some people, but
not at all.
Where are they going? How are they getting there? I mean, what if that cube portal was something to take our whole team? You know what I mean? Like, what if it was there to like like a trap in the creek where you're trying to catch some fish. You know what I mean? Or like a crab trap or something in the ocean. What if?
What if?
What
That's
if?
interesting.
I mean, yeah.
Because I mean, I've been saying one of the ways that I've been trying to describe the way I think about things to people when I'm asked is that these beings, whatever they are, these entities, there's that word, entities again, these entities in these other realms have keys to these doorways to be able to come here and go back, where we don't have that ability always. I mean, unless you're remote viewing aficionados like yourself. But I definitely feel that there is a strong possibility that some of these missing 411 cases that are documented have everything to do with interdimensional shifts, and whether somebody is accidentally walking into a portal or it is a weaponized portal where an entity is coming through, grabbing and taking back through that portal. That's very, very interesting. Very interesting. So that's what you mean by weaponized portal then, huh?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it could also be, I do a lot of work and I'm friends with some of the people who are in the secret space program and claim to be part of the secret space program and kidnapped and put into the programs. And a couple of those guys, at least definitely one of them, my buddy Arkeem, says that he was part of a program where they have like a little duffel bag he'd carry around and had these like brick looking, they look like magnets. They just take them out and stick them up on the wall, like in an oval, like an arch. And that wall would just become a portal. They could walk in and out. I mean,
so this was technology?
Technology. Yeah. So, I mean, because, I woke up one night, I had ETs in my bedroom. How did they get there? It's like Santa Claus going through the chimney. I mean, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how did they get there? They open a portal in my home.
100%.
I don't think they opened the door, and it was odd because I do remember like my dogs. Okay, here's something like where like this is crazy, right? You wake up, and this is something that other people I've discussed with other people who have had incidents with ETs like in their home and stuff. It's like you wake up, and I had like two at the time. I had like pit bull lab mixes, two of them, brother and sister, and I could not understand why Zoe and Max were not waking up. Why were they not barking at these things? And so it makes you think like, well, am I awake? And of course I've been taught like there are ways that you can tell if you're awake or if you're in sleep paralysis, you move a finger. Okay, move a finger. See if you can move that. Or like, am I awake or am I having a dream? And there's ways that you can tell if you're in a dream state or if you're awake. You're just kind of like in a little bit of sleep paralysis. And I know what I saw. Okay. But I just remember thinking, why are my dogs not waking up? Why are my dogs not up? And yeah, there's just weird things that you notice, when things like that are going down. So
yeah.
But yeah, the portal thing, it's like, how did they get there?
Well, I would argue. I don't want to argue. I would say that. Have you ever considered that you, in that moment of interaction with these entities in your home, you yourself, you even brought up the idea that they portaled in, right?
Maybe.
What if you, right, maybe. You're not saying for sure, but it's a theory. Here's a theory for you then. What if they portaled in and whatever state of existence you're in, whether you were in the waking state, physical, or this was more consciousness, what you experienced, where you experienced it was not here, but on what I personally, for lack of better terms, retired trucker here, call the bridge between realms. I've talked to people on air, off air, who describe experiences where it seems like they were here in their familiar surroundings, but little things were off during this weird paranormal experience. What if you were on this bridge between realms where it's almost like the upside down from Stranger Things, and it's like a mirror world, but there are smaller things off. And one of those weird things that were off is that your dogs weren't waking up, because maybe you were seeing your dogs in this realm, but you weren't totally here on this realm. You were on the bridge between realms.
Oh, I love the way you think. Yes, 100%. That could be it too. Absolutely. I've been talking about Stranger Things a lot because I just spent some time up at Montauk, New York. And I was there with Montauk survivors of that program.
Really?
And we went up there for the anniversary of the USS Eldridge showing back up through the portal. It's like a 20-year biorhythm portal that opens. Another portal that opens up in Montauk, New York, at the top tip of Long Island, New York, every 20 years.
Really?
We went there for that date. And we even had guys that were in a boat out there in the ocean waiting for that ship to show back up. And the rest of us were on the cliffs at the what do you call it? The bluff at Camp Hero. And that's where they based Stranger Things off of, was Montauk. So yeah, wow. I was there. Totally there. I was doing Bigfooting up there too, by the way. They have a Bigfoot on their property.
Let me ask you a question.
Bunch of Bigfoots. Yeah.
About Camp Hero, the people who were part of the Montauk project that you were with. And I don't mean to ask this in a way that makes you feel awkward in answering, but I've had interactions with people who tell me that they were part of the Montauk project. And one most recently happened, I think, about a month ago. And I sat down to record with the guy, and he never told me that he was part of the Montauk project. He never brought up Camp Hero. He was describing to me what his childhood was like and what happened to him. And he started talking about how the principal of his school brought him to the principal's house with his parents. There's this conversation, and what he's relaying to me is very foggy. It's not very coherent as far as how he's relaying the story. And then he tells me how his parents essentially sold him into a program, and he remembers driving across states out to New York, where his parents dropped him off in New York and then flew back home. And he's describing what these tests that he was going through. And I stopped him and I said, "Are you talking about Camp Hero? Were you part of the Project Montauk?" And he says, "Yes." And I said, "Well, why didn't you just say that, man?" And he said, he didn't know if I would believe him or something. And we wound up having a lengthy conversation. But in communicating with him, I got the sense that he has fragmented memories. And I'm wondering, do you have similar experiences with the people that you're talking with, in the sense that if it wasn't for you understanding what the details are of the situation that they went through and understanding what they went through as far as the abuses go, did it seem like to you in communication with those people that if you didn't understand the background, that they would just come off as crazy?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, see, I have an interest in the Montauk Project because I do remote viewing, and that is mind control. Okay. And I'm not controlling other people's minds. I've learned to control my mind. Okay. And that's something that's very important when you're doing cryptid field research and you're looking at something that's not supposed to exist, because it can be very traumatic. Okay. And you have to have balance mentally to be able to do the stuff that I do out in the field in our team. Okay. So I am fully aware of the mind control aspect, and learning how your subconscious works and things like that. And there is something that's a dirty little secret that we have here in the United States. That's MK Ultra mind control. Okay, a lot of mind control. And every single person that I know that has been a part of the Montauk programs and Project Phoenix and all these other, there's a lot of subcategories too now. Okay, there's a lot of different Black programs. Now, I don't believe I was a part of any of those programs, but I started getting a relationship with some of the people who remember being in these programs from some of the remote viewing targets that I had been doing, because I was getting data that had to deal with the secret space program when I was actually remote viewing cryptids. And it was interesting because I was talking about some of my data at a disclosure conference last year. And a lot of those guys, I'd never met them in person before. And I know who you're talking about, I think. Okay. But I believe I've met him. And I know, and I consider a lot of these people my friends, because I do a lot of work with them now, because it was a natural partnership kind of, not that I'm partnering with them, but working together was kind of natural, because here I am doing all these blind remote viewing targets where I didn't even know what the secret space program was. I never even heard of it, really. I didn't know what it was, but it kept coming up in my data with these underground facilities where they are creating chimeras underground. There's labs where they are making chimeras. And I had like my buddy Daryl James. Okay. He was part of the Solar Warden. He was actually in the U.S. Navy. Okay. And he approached me at that conference. He said, hey, he's like, I got to tell you about some of the cryptids, some of these things that I saw, some of these chimeras, human animal hybrids that I've seen at these facilities underground. And I was like, well, shoot. Yeah. Tell me about it, dude. I want to hear all about it. And so, yeah, I've even brought him on my show a couple times to talk about it. But we got to remember, there's this whole MK Ultra mind control where they do shatter your mind, your personality, and it's through horrific means. Okay, a lot of abuse, a lot of ritualistic abuse. I mean, I think it even goes into Satanism and stuff. Okay, so I think that anyone who's been a part of these programs could potentially look like they're kind of crazy to the normal general public, for sure.
Man.
Yeah.
I'm glad I brought that up and I asked you, because I also don't think, and I've taught, and I've aired several episodes of people like that. I usually keep it for the members, because in my general experiences, I feel bad putting out episodes sometimes, in the sense that I don't think everybody is ready for the backlash that their story gets, And
Yeah.
this guy was definitely one of those where I was thinking, if I put this out, it's going to be a problem for him, like a lot, And so I still have his number. I still, communication isn't cut off or anything. It's just, it's one of those things where you sometimes you get stories and you just don't know what to do with it, because you're sitting there and you're thinking, how do I convey this story to the world where they can actually hear it and understand what's happening? And that's why I asked you, because you basically confirmed how I feel at times, where it's just like, if you're not in the mindset of understanding what this person went through, it's going to just come off as like, you are nuts. But
And they get that, but I think a lot of them are kind of used to it, but they kind of, and that's why there's only like a few key guys that are out there really in the public talking about it. But see, like I hang out in all the different circles, and because what I do is so interconnected to all the communities of the paranormal, the UFO community, the secret space program community, spiritual community, the cryptid community, Bigfoot dogman, whatever, the ghost community. I mean, I'm a part of all of it with my research, all of it. Like it's all connected. I am the walking example of this is all connected. Okay. All of it.
I agree. There is way more connected to a lot of this stuff than traditionally had been thought. And I think we're just scratching the surface of a lot of this stuff. So,
Yep.
you know, I think we're going to bring this in for a landing, this conversation, because I feel like you keep saying things and like, oh boy, here we go. Like I'm thinking, you have so much to talk about. I'm thinking, man. So, anyways, I really want to bring you back on again in the future. I would love to bring you and some other people in studio for a big group conversation around the table. I think that'd be fantastic. And so I didn't realize you're not too far from me. So we'll schedule it out. We'll plan to have this happen because I think that we can pull at so many more threads. We didn't even touch on the missing time with the UFOs and the werewolves and the LBL and all that stuff. We can have you back on for another conversation and stuff. But before we get out of here, let people know again where they can find you online so they can, follow you, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, or wherever.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I have a website that's thecryptidhuntress.com. You can find all of my links there. All of my shows are posted there. I try to update it just every day because I've got 4 live shows a week that I do. And then I'm on people's podcasts like every day too. And I speak at a lot of conferences and I'm doing a Squatch out up in East Tennessee, actually, coming up in September. I'm speaking at the Full Disclosure Now conference in July down in St. Pete, Florida. And I was just in Reno. I just got back from Reno yesterday. So with Spaced Out Radio, I do have a show on Spaced Out Radio every Sunday night. But I do shows on my channel on YouTube, The Cryptid Huntress, every Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday night. So you can find me there. I'm also just The Cryptid Huntress, Jessica Jones, all over the place. So yeah, thank you, Tony, for having me today. This has been really interesting. It's been fun.
The Cryptid Huntress, Jessica Jones. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Well, that's the show, everybody. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please share the show with your friends. I don't care where or how you share the show. Just share the show. If you enjoyed it, that's the best thing you could do to help this show grow. Share the show. And until next week, stay safe, take care, and remember, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. Bye.
Just feeling probably like you. I'm just drifting, probably right beside you. Oh, the abyss, control from afar. What did we miss? Now we're left with the scars.
We love the lows but hate the highs.
Is the other side of the sun.
With all this glow, it's hard to hide.
It's bright.
We love the lows but hate the highs.
Is the other side of the sun.
With all this dark, it's hard to find.
It's bright.
Everybody wanna preach a happy median. I see they dopamine fix come from media. Now your spirit getting booked on Expedia. Soul searching like Long Island Medium. I should've been taught. Sleepwalk through life, but being woke is an insult. They should've been caught. They want us flooded in fear by drowning us on the asphalt. We love the lows but hate the highs.
Is the other side of the sun.
With all this glow, it's hard to hide.
It's bright.
We love the lows but hate the highs.
Is the other side of the sun.
With all this dark, it's hard to find.
It's bright. Masking from elites, goddess detaching what is free. Now we're rationing our needs for our soul.
Yeah, we're not fasting from belief. The smell of Sharpies right the streets, looting liabilities like it's gold.
Atomic number 79, Gucci, Prada, Jordan High. Sniff that line, it's on the house till you're sold.
The ones that keep us locked for the felony time, or the ones that fund the dollars for the BLM sign. Y'all ain't really doing what y'all supposed to. Y'all just follow suit like the rest do. Oh, yeah. We love the lows but hate the highs.
Is the other side of the sun.
With all this glow, it's hard to hide. the low.